I'm no superhero. I'm just a humble architect from Hong Kong. As you know, Hong Kong, it's in the news at the moment, and I think it's almost serendipity that I've had the luck to be invited here to share with you. Probably will become a parable for how we look at SDGs in terms of sustainable cities and communities. So my talk today is called The Catastrophe Through Housing Crisis in Hong Kong. And the story really starts with the image of Hong Kong being recognized for so long as one of the most successful and wealthy cities in the world. The world looks to Hong Kong as a model of development, as a model to how we all want to achieve in our urbanized world. In this kind of success of Hong Kong during the last 50 years of development, we have garnered a lot of accolades, one of which is that we have now categorically become the most expensive city in the world. And that sounds so wonderful because it seems like we have created wealth for everybody in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, that is far from the truth. And what I want to tell you about in this story today is that the urbanization and the growth in cities, which has been a real engine behind many of the issues that we are facing with the SDGs, is in fact a double-edged sword. And Hong Kong perhaps will become the first city in the world to show you some of those symptoms of the double-edged sword, the successes and the weaknesses. Hong Kong is famous for its high-rise buildings, its immense density, its incredible architecture. I, for one, as an architect, participate in building these cities. These buildings are expensive to build. They are incredibly well engineered, and it seems like we have built a great infrastructure for a city. But unfortunately, they've also become extremely expensive. We have seen some of the most astronomical property prices ever achieved on this planet to happen here in Hong Kong. Here, on average in Hong Kong, you have to pay in excess of $3,000 per square feet to buy property. And that is some 3 times as much as London, 5 times as much as Beijing, and probably magnitudes higher than here in Delhi. Now, the outcome of all of this urbanization and inflation means that for whatever dollar you hold in your pocket as a citizen of a city like Hong Kong, you can only afford less. And so the real estate developers in Hong Kong are forced to create extremely small products that people can ultimately afford. That results in what we call nano flats or nano apartments. Here, for example, is a real plan of one of these nano flats. They cost around $450,000, but they are only 150 square feet. So you can imagine a young family who are scraping together the savings, and they can only afford 150 square feet. Big enough for a bed, but not big enough to have a living room. A kitchen that doesn't really exist because it's only in the corridor. A bathroom which is so small, it's probably about the same as a bathroom inside an aircraft. The results of all of this is a change in the lifestyles of people. You've worked hard in your life, you might be approaching middle class, but you are living in increasingly small spaces, increasingly densely populated with your neighbor. And of course, that's been driven by the economics of the place, our growth, our inflation. But does this really result in a healthy, sustainable lifestyle? We need to wait if we can't afford housing for public housing. And public housing in Hong Kong is in an extremely short supply. The average wait is 5 to 10 years, if at all you get it by ballot. So you're talking about 1 to 2 to 3 generations of people who run the risk of never having the ability to live in public housing, nor the ability to afford housing. In Hong Kong, a population of 6.5 million people with the highest foreign reserves in the world, we are having population of in excess of 250,000 people living in conditions like this. In this picture, you see an entire family of 3 to 4 sharing just one space. They sleep, they cook, they work, the children do their homework, they store their goods, they store their possessions, all in one space. Perhaps you expect this picture to be from some third world country. You don't expect it from Hong Kong. But this is the reality of what we have led ourselves to develop because we have believed in growth in an uncontrollable way. The cost of living and renting in some of these small spaces in Hong Kong are not cheap. What I showed you here in this picture, which is a small family of 3, they live in a bunk bed, the kitchen's right next to the bed, the fridge is right next to the bed, with no private bathroom. They have to share that in the common area. Costs in excess, sorry, this is actually wrong. This is $1,000 a month in rental on average in Hong Kong. And then for the older, the infirmed, in the aging populations that we're facing in urbanized areas around the world, they are forced to live in even worse conditions. In Hong Kong, we have a phenomenon called cage living. And cage living is effectively a bed space that people on the lower sectors of society rent as their home. They're called cages because we use netting around the beds so that they can keep their possessions safe. And they, on average in Hong Kong, and there's over 20,000 people in this category in Hong Kong, living at $250 a month in rental, US dollars. So what is the result of all of this development? When we believe only in growth, only in urbanization, only in the belief that creating wealth is the generator of a better world, is that we create a mathematics that eventually turn out to be impossible to balance. The younger people who live and work as they grow up harder to achieve their accomplishments lose hope when they cannot afford to live in such a system like Hong Kong. And so, in the last 6 months, I'm sure you have seen in the news, we have had absolutely unprecedented social unrest in Hong Kong. On one particular day, out of 6.5 million people living in Hong Kong, 2 million people came out on the streets. Now, their unhappiness is not only about housing, but housing is one of the key components, along with politics, along with education, along with health, etc., etc. But housing is a fundamental right, I believe, that everyone on this planet deserves to have. A decent, safe home. And a city like Hong Kong can no longer provide it for its people. This is the result.
This is an emergency. The station is closing because of a serious incident. 通过时不需要使用车票。
Pretty harrowing video. And this is happening every single day. And in fact, in the last 48 hours since I arrived here in Delhi, we have had the worst set of violence ever in Hong Kong. It's gotten worse. We've had 3 fatalities in the last 2 days. And it really is catastrophic. Now, I bring these harrowing images to you because SDGs sustainability is often predicated on a civilized society that can come together to achieve these goals. Unfortunately, we rely too much on the civilized part of society. Once we drop below the line, civilized society breaks down. And it can happen here in India. It can happen in China. It can even happen in Europe. We've seen it with the umbrella movement in France. So we have to be very, very careful. Anyway, moving forward with this story, I now put my hat on as the architect to tell you about how we are starting to try to think of some fast solutions to this. Building housing to deal with the housing crisis is an incredibly difficult and in fact very, very low intelligent way of doing it. Because building housing actually takes too long. It takes too long to deliver the quantity, and we need to find the land. So recently, I discussed with the Hong Kong government an idea to create transient housing, develop a new kind of architecture that is the cheapest in the world, fastest to build, easiest to move, to deploy on land that is left empty around the city. The kind of housing is called OPOD, and it can create a 150 square foot house, all in with all of its equipment and furniture, the structure, etc., for less than $15,000 US. And this is the idea, that we use some of the available components around us and convert them, in this case, concrete water pipe. In China, we produce concrete water pipe in their millions. A lot of them are overproduced. Taking concrete water pipe, connecting them together, fitting them out, allows us to build incredibly fast housing at incredibly fast speeds. This OPOD is designed for 1 to 2 people to live. And this is the actual first prototype we built. It's a very interesting space. It looks like a water pipe on the outside, but inside is actually a very cozy home. This is the living space, which has a sofa and the shelves, etc. All the wiring are exposed on the wall for easy adaptability. All the material here are from recycled material from construction sites. The bed can fold out from the sofa, have storage underneath. We have a living module at the back that has a cooking area equipped with a microwave, fridge, a cooker, and a sink, air conditioner at the top. And then at the back of the water pipe is the essential toilet that we take for granted. But in fact, so many people around the world never have their own bathroom. And being a concrete water pipe, it never leaks. So it's a good way of making a toilet. We stack these concrete water pipes up to create fast housing. They are built and made in the factory, and they're moved to any particular piece of land, and within a matter of days, we can create housing quickly for people. And that movability, adaptability, is in fact the core part of the sustainability, along with its low cost. The ability for us to reuse our housing and not waste it through deconstructing it afterwards, throwing it into landfills, is an essential part of how we can build housing for people in the future. They're very powerful to unleash the potential of our space in our cities. So much of the land in our cities are hidden in the crevices between buildings. By using modular construction like this, we can inhabit these spaces quickly and create homes. We could even take up some of those spaces that we often think is impossible to use, such as under highways and flyovers, as well as taking space on top of existing structures strong enough to create another platform for housing. Here, this is one of the ferry piers in Hong Kong that has a beautiful view of the harbor, but it's underused on its roof, and we can create housing on top of that. Circular is one shape of water pipe, and it's designed for 1 to 2 people to live. We have a version now that is square, which is basically converting available box culverts. That is 255 square feet in usable area for families of 4, all with their own toilets, their own kitchens, and their own living areas, all built at exactly the same cost at around $15,000 US. And with that development, we have gotten support from the Hong Kong government for a piece of land that we are now constructing as fast as possible, 150 units to house over 300 people in Hong Kong for a rental of less than about $200 US a month, so that we can quickly bring some relief It's a drop in the ocean, but it's a solution that I came here to Delhi, hopefully to share with you, to look to you as partners around the world, that if you have such problems of housing, if you want to use the solution, I'm here and my team is here to want to share this expertise with you, and hopefully you can take this back to your countries and to solve the problems that, of course, we are all facing. So I would like to end with a message from us in Hong Kong. Don't worry about us. We will survive. We are learning the bitter lessons of development which is unchecked. The SDGs gives us a platform for considering things. We must continue with wisdom and control, manage our growth. Only by doing so can we really rely on the civility of civil society. Thank you very, very much.